here this morning in Rancho Cuyamaca State Park, and it is one of the local state parks here in the San Diego mountains. It's a really good area to kind of test my legs before going on a big trip. And I got my full pack on my back right now. And it's only about 45 pounds. I've been able to reduce the weight a lot, so I think that my upcoming backpacking trip will actually be quite pleasant, just as long as the weather cooperates. But after going on the winter trip, I really enjoyed being able to share the videos in 4K because I think it really gave an even better sense of being there. So in the past on backpacking trips, I've used my Canon G7X Mark II, and I really like that camera, but it doesn't do 4K. So I decided to upgrade to the Sony RX100 Mark V. And the purpose of today's hike is not only to test my legs with my pack and everything else along those lines, but also to test out my new video kit, get familiar with it, work out any issues that might come up in the field. And I'm recording the audio separately. I'll tell you about that in a bit. But also I modified the camera a little bit to put some little fuzzy things on top, which is a little bit of a challenge given the design of the Sony. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna finish up my hike here, then head back to my house, grab some lunch, and then tell you kind of what I'm gonna be using on my next backpacking trip as far as video, audio, tripods, all that sort of stuff. But it is a beautiful day up here in the mountains.
So it was a pretty good hike this morning. It wasn't a really long hike, it wasn't a very strenuous hike, but honestly, with the pack on my back at about 45 pounds, it was actually quite enjoyable. There's a nice breeze, sound of birds. It was really, really nice. But ultimately, I had to get back here and work on some other stuff, make some prints and stuff along those lines. So this is more just to kind of get a feeling for the new video setup, get the muscle memory down, and see if there's any sort of thing that I needed to work on a little bit better before going on the next trip. I think my only real observation is that I should probably walk a little bit slower when doing the walking and talking kind of video. Mostly because it seemed a little choppier than I would like, but I think that maybe I'm just being a little too sensitive about that kind of stuff. But anyways, I want to show you the camera that I was using for that. So this is the Sony, the RX100 Mark V. Really small camera, uses a 1-inch sensor. I did a couple of modifications on it to kind of help things out a little bit. The most important thing I think when it comes to doing the video stuff is having good audio. And that's where it's a little bit of a challenge with this camera right out of the box, because the mics are right on the top. But also this camera has a really cool pop-up viewfinder, which is really handy for checking exposure and reviewing video. So it's a really cool thing to have, but it's also just like 2 millimeters away from one of the mics. And there's also a pop-up flash right in the middle. So what I did is I bought some magnets on Amazon. They're self-adhesive magnets, pretty strong little magnets. They're tiles that are 20 millimeters by 20 millimeters by 2 millimeters. And they're represented by about the size of this right here. I had to do some custom cutouts here, actually with some wood carving tools in order to make it really precise. But what it allowed me to do is position a full-size magnet here, full-size magnet here, make room for the power button, make it so I could pop up the flash, pop up the viewfinder. I drilled little holes here right in the middle, right exactly where the microphones are. And then I took some other magnets that match up with these ones perfectly. You have to kind of make sure the orientation is just right so they hook on there really well. Now, I don't know if you can see, but I drilled an even larger hole in the back, and I labeled them right and left. And so you'll see that this will fit right in place right there. And so long as I line up the front edge right there, it's gonna line up absolutely perfectly. And I have the other one here labeled for left, and that one is gonna go on there. And so just so long as they're lined up on the front edge, it's gonna work really well. And because of the way magnets work, it really can't shift from side to side because it's held on there really, really well. And I did some tests in front of a fan, and these really make a really big difference. It's still not the ideal audio, but if need be, I could rely on this if I didn't have time to, set up my external audio setup. And when it comes to the external audio setup, I think you guys might not have even seen the microphone. I was trying to be a little bit more, I was trying to make it a little bit more hidden. And so I was using this as the audio recorder. This is the Tascam DR10L, a super small audio recorder. It just has the mic jack up top there. The power switch and record switch is really cool. It's a slide switch, so you can't accidentally make it stop recording, or you can't accidentally turn it on or turn it off. It's very deliberate with the way that it works. Super easy controls. But I can throw this in my pocket. And then for the microphone, I was using a Rode pin mic. And this is kind of a cool microphone because it's pretty easy to hide and you don't have to worry about cables kind of getting in the way. What happens is you actually take the capsule off right here, and you have these 3 sharp pins. You put this behind your shirt and then you pin the mic onto the front of your shirt. That way it can't shift around. These are not an inexpensive microphone, but it's one of those things where it just kind of gets the job done really well. And for the video today, I actually mounted it right about here. So it was kind of out of view of the camera shot, but still able to get my voice just fine. So that's the audio that I used when I was actually talking to the camera. And then the built-in mics, I use those for the sounds of the water, the sounds of the birds, the trail sounds. And if need be, I could use those for this talking to camera sort of shots, but it is even better audio if I use the external audio. The other thing that's really important is an ND filter. You might notice that I have a filter on the front of this camera right now, and I had to use a third-party filter adapter to do that. And you can see that I can take it off just like that, bayonet's on. This is made by LensMate, and this is made specifically for this camera. It came with this really simple guide to allow you to line it up there, and it just sticks right onto the front of it there. And then on the filter adapter, you can just thread on a filter. In this case, I have a really dark filter. This is a 6-stop ND filter. And here's the really cool thing. The camera I'm filming this with right now, the Sony a7S II, I'm using a 50mm Zeiss lens. I also have a 21mm Zeiss lens. The reason I say that is that those 2 lenses and this adapter, they're all the same size, 52mm. So I have the same filters I use on all my cameras, all my lenses, which is actually really, really convenient. But this 6-stop filter is one I've used on the Sony. It's a little darker than I'd want for this one. I think a 5-stop would be pretty ideal because this camera has a built-in 3-stop filter. Then I could put a 5-stop filter on, or I can put them both on and have it where it's 8 stops altogether. But for those of you that are not familiar with why you'd use a filter like this for video, why you'd use such a dark filter, you really need to limit the light that enters the camera to get your shutter speed a little bit slower, because video looks a little bit more natural if you have a little bit of a blur on moving subjects. Like my hand right now is going to be a blur as opposed to just absolutely frozen frames in the video. So being able to put a filter on there is kind of also a nice touch. And the other filter that I have, and again, it's one I bought to use with my big Sony camera I'm filming this video with right now, but a graduated ND filter. So it's part dark, part clear. And I use this video for filming some of the stuff today as well. Some of the scenes where there's a really bright area in the sun and the foreground is kind of in shade. So it's kind of nice to be able to use all the different filters on all my camera setup, which is nice. As far as batteries, I definitely learned that this camera is a battery hog, so it has a lot in common with my big Sony. I have, I think, 3 or 4 batteries right now. I'll probably get more. Sony has this cool setup where you can buy a battery plus a super small USB charger. It's like $50 or something like that. So this is how I'm going to be charging the batteries when I'm in the field. I have a little solar panel that charges up a big battery, and then I'll just charge these batteries up from that. And I might pick up another one of these so I can perhaps charge 2 batteries at a time and sort of keep up with how fast this camera is going to be going through batteries. As far as hand holding the camera, this is right here is what I was using. A little Manfrotto, I think they call this the Pixie tripod. It makes kind of a nice handle, really solid, especially if I'm setting it up in sand or something like that. So I use that for handheld shots. And then this is the tripod that I use for the trail shots. I've had this since like 2011. This is from Tamrac. This is the Zip Shot tripod. I believe this is discontinued now. I don't even know if you can find these anymore. But it's cool because it's made of 10 poles. It's super light. You just undo these guys here, and then you unfurl the beast of a tripod. It kind of finds its way together there. So this kind of gives you a feeling for how big this is. It's not super tall, but it's pretty reasonable as far as the height. And the key on these guys is you just kind of tension the legs a little bit, and then it's actually quite strong. And it holds this camera no problem. It could even hold a small SLR and be okay. But I've been using one of these guys for a long time. And the reason I don't use this as kind of a pole to hold the camera as I'm doing the walking and talking shots is that ultimately it does make some kind of noises, which kind of get in the way a little bit. But I was pretty happy with overall how the setup worked. Is kind of a great exercise to get out there and kind of work with it a little bit. I'll probably need to do a few more little tests and just make sure I have the whole setup down before dedicating to going on my next trip, which is coming up pretty soon. But I want to thank everyone for watching, and we'll see you around next time.